So about me, I am, I think like the, so stats wise, I'm 24, male, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I am from the DRC, DR Congo.
Okay.
So that means I can speak French, Swahili, and those languages. And I've been living in South Africa for probably most of my life. So since I was about four or so. So I picked up a lot with even like my accent. It sounds like I'm from here. Um,
That's
I have siblings, three of them, and I with my mom and my dad. Things about me, I think some things that I enjoy in terms of like hobbies, and that is like skateboarding, chess, and drawing. I like the artistic approach to things. So whether it be music or song and dance, or just seeing choreography or patterns and that kind of thing. I really enjoy those types of elements or conversations. I also enjoy, since I like drawing, also like designing things or making things like in sequence or in pattern. And a lot of that comes through my profession. So I work in the IT space as a data integration analyst. Um, and that involves a lot of coding, a lot of database work, but all in all, it allows me to basically solve problems because I like basically coming in and solving problems or finding a challenge and like rising to it. So it's always a nice thing whenever someone says no, we can't do this, or we've been struggling with this for like a few months, or I don't know how to do this, and then I come in and then I help them, and then we might find a solution that works. And when we find a solution that works and they're able to use it, then that gives me like gives me kind of joy, because then I know that I did something that helped someone else and it actually solved a problem.
okay.
So I like those type of fields and designing and and it puts me also into like a space whereby I always become a bit critical between like which colors to use or which design to use, or I double check on
Details.
myself. It does make yeah, focusing on the details a lot. Maybe then also end up like procrastinating, like maybe we can do it tomorrow or a few days later. But I think for me the thing I enjoy most is like coming into challenges and solving them and finding patterns. So if something wasn't working for a while, I want to know like why wasn't it working. When I find why it wasn't working, then I get like a kick of like solving the problem.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming through. And I suppose now if we go into the meat of this whole session, which is about inspiration. So are there any people whom you look up to? And perhaps if you can just give us an idea of why, and we will follow that up with, are there any set of principles that you govern your life through, or is there any set of values that you exhibit that you would like to share with us, perhaps as things that you hold quite important in your life, just from a value perspective now. But let's start. Let's start with that first one. Yes.
Okay. So the first question was like, is there any people that
Mm-hmm.
I look up
Look
to?
up
So
to.
definitely the first people you'd look up to is like in the family setting is my mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
I think from like both sides. I think my mom is more of someone who connects with people a lot, like checks up on people and phones them and wants really to keep that community space. And then from my dad's side, it's like the hardworking and diligence and problem solving and like going through stuff systematically. So that's where I picked up some of those values and traits of
Mm-hmm.
community and systematic, hardworking approach. And then I believe you said the second question is like, what are some of the values or principles that I live by? I think
Mm-hmm.
there's also other people that I value. It's a non-exhaustive list. I think like when you go to like in a church setting,
No.
there's a lot of aunts and uncles who, in a way, they go out of their own bubble to like drop nuggets, knowledge, a bit of wisdom here and there to
Mm-hmm.
say, now that you're growing, consider this in like each and in their own unique way. They want to basically see the next generation grow. and that's men and women alike. So you'd see some uncles that approach you, and then they would say, now that you're growing, just take it, like, um, they would tell it to you like straight. So they would say, now that you're growing, just take a look at your dress code. Like, certain clothes you can't wear anymore because you're growing now. So and I don't want to start any fires, but I
No,
think when I
that's
was growing
true.
up, the skinny jeans or torn jeans was coming up. But then it's also depends on how you want to present yourself. So they approached me and they said, okay, how do you want to present yourself? These certain dresses or attires would represent this, and so on. So a lot of uncles and aunts from church would actually approach the younger generation and then give them that type of advice, whether it be like on one-on-one or through the various meetings or groups that we have. Like, I can even go back and remember, like, when I was still like 13 or so, at church. I attend Gospel Rama Church. There was a youth pastor, Pastor Mike. So we were 13. There was like 3 or 4 of us. We were still transitioning from the phase of like Sunday school, going into the big church. And then Pastor Mike took us on, the 4 of us. And then he asked us like similar questions you're asking now, whereby, what do you inspired by? Where do you want to go? And then I think at that time I was still in the artistic phase. I liked drawing. I really wanted to become a graphic designer. And he did something whereby he called one of his friends who's also in that field, and he sat down and spoke with me. And then he also got me this A3 sketch pad, which I still have today. And that was, in a way, it's like inspiring, whereby someone older who's already advanced
Made it
comes
in a
to your
way.
level, speaks to you, and then also wants you to pursue your dream, and then enables you to do it. So there's a lot of cases of that. Just hold on. A lot of cases whereby someone would come and then impact knowledge or nuggets and go out of their way to give you that that additional boost. There's also, if I still keep in line with like the church setting, there's also Bishop Chalu, who in his teachings, and Mama Beatrice in their teachings, there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom, but then something that they always string through is that, how does this impact us on the day to day? So that question actually gives us a bit further. If I can go into like the Christian area, whereby we're not only hearers of the word, but we're also doers of the word. So that space whereby, yes, you're learning something, but it's more than just being a potato or a sponge and absorbing knowledge, but you're also
Just
taking this
taking in.
knowledge and applying it. So that's where those are like the type of people that I gain inspiration from. There's a lot of also like public figures you could go to. Like, I think one for me that has like been rubbing off on me is like Trevor Noah. I listen to him as like a comedian, but even though he's making his jokes or he's making his comedy sets, you can see a lot of truth in what he says and the humility that comes across, especially now that he's like in America. You still see that he still comes and does shows in South Africa, or he still speaks about like the homeland, or he tried as well to adapt to his new environment, but then still keep his style, quote unquote. So no, he didn't like, if I could say, he didn't compromise to go into America. He went there, but he still kept his like his core essence. So there's a lot of public figures that I could name as well. I know if I start speaking, I'll probably do a 2-hour session.
No stress.
But then going on to like your second point, whereby you say, what are like some of the principles I live on? There's a couple, definitely. Growing up, there was 2 that came through from like the primary school and the high school. So in terms of like the primary school, we had, I believe it's in Latin, whereby it says facta non verba, and that's basically deeds and not words. Because what it then basically meant is that it is more impactful or more significant what you do as opposed to what you say. And I think this rubs off, or it's been like a running theme whereby I think Bishop also said it, whereby it's, we don't care how much you know until we know how much you care. And in line with that, it's also, it's not necessarily what you say, but it's what you do in accompanying to what you say. So that's like one of the principles that came through from primary school, whereby I attended Timor Hall here in South Africa, whereby they said deeds, not words. And it like basically every time we sang the school song, it was brainwashed into our minds, whereby we now students that actually do things as opposed to give big speeches. So that was
Live
one.
it
And then
there.
at definitely. And then at high school, when I went to Norman Henshelwood, the school theme basically was knowledge and integrity. So they just like lined up perfectly, whereby now I from coming from a school whereby I was told or taught or conditioned, now transitioning to a space whereby as I do things, I need to do things from a place of knowledge or understanding or actual cognitive capacity, as well as keeping integrity. So staying true to who you are, not really compromising because you see a new opportunity, or changing like a chameleon because your environment changed, but not that, but staying true to yourself. So those two I picked up from school, subconsciously. But now that I looked at the question, or now that I reflect, it's actually something that I live by. And then the other two that comes from like the biblical standard was from 1 Corinthians 10:31, which is like, whatever you do, do it to the glory of God. And that kind of stuck with me, because if, for example, I'm doing like a presentation, or I'm delivering a piece of work, or I am basically putting an effort in something, if how I understand it is that if I'm not pleased, or if I'm not confident that I put out 100% in, or I did the best I could, then for me, surely I believe that I'm not giving glory to God, or I'm not representing my Christian walk in the best way possible. Because if it's a case of we both, myself and someone else, are in a classroom setting or work setting, and my work is subpar, it's not really representative of my background, or where I come from, or my beliefs. So that is definitely something that I live by, whereby each thing that I do it to the glory of God. And basically what that means is, or how I extrapolate or draw from that, is that everything that you do, you need to do it of a high standard, something that you're proud of. And even if, I think the other thing is that we also get called into like a trap, whereby we think that if we need to do more, we need to do better. It means that as soon as you do like a certain, like, we put hard figures to doing more and doing better. But essentially, if before my best was 50%, and I push and I get now 60% in like a test, then definitely that is an improvement. So it doesn't have to be that all of us get A's, or all of us are geniuses, but in our own little way, if there's progress, or if there's visible change, or if there's actual actionable steps, then definitely that still counts. So it doesn't have to be that all of us are in Lamborghinis or throwing millions out. But if before we only were able to save 10 Rand, and now we're starting to save 100 Rand, then by sure means that is progress. And then the other one was in Timothy. I think it's in 2 Timothy, because another principle that I live by is like just reading the book of Timothy. I find it just exciting or inspiring that Timothy is like this young preacher, and then Paul's giving him nuggets of wisdom, like, okay, when you're appointing leaders, do this, or this is how you go about it, stay true to doctrine, and that kind of stuff. So in Timothy, I believe in the second book, it tells him that a soldier doesn't necessarily get conflicted with like civilian pursuits. He came because of the officer that enlisted him. And it also says like an athlete, the farmer, I believe it's in verse 4, whereby it says the farmer, the hardworking farmer, retrieves his crops and that kind of thing. So that really just put a lot to not necessarily doing things out of my own, but doing things because of on that point, it's like basically how Paul teaches Timothy, and then how Timothy then goes about it. And then there's like a lot of verses in there whereby it also tells Timothy whereby he shouldn't be like ashamed or feel less because he's young, but he should treat the older folks like they were his mother, or the older men like a father. So those type of things whereby I just grab from that book and really try and apply it to my own life as a young individual, and
Mm-hmm.
learn that to grow. So those are like some of the principles that I live by. And then I think another thing is to just be open, because even though I have these set principles that I live by, there's also others that I still need to learn, or certain people that will drop nuggets or wisdom here
Every now and again.
from varying ages, years, from varying ages, and it's just to be open to hear from them as well.
Cool, cool. Thanks, man. Tell me, you guys, by me saying you guys, I know I'm speaking like I'm 25 years older than you, but you guys are growing up in a time where there's a whole lot of presence digitally or online, let's put
Mm,
it that way, which is slightly different from, well, vastly different from, say, the time in which your folks would have grown up in. And
mm,
also in terms of most of the people around you in terms of age, I would, I would imagine from the older ones, there is that gap, if I can put it that way, where they
yeah.
did things slightly different from you. I wanted to find out firstly, how do you manage your time?
Mm,
One, this is now from your own personal stuff to your work related
mm,
stuff that you're speaking about earlier on. And also just over and above that, how do you handle social media?
mm.
Hmm. I think let's leave it that open ended.
Okay. So how do I manage my time?
Hmm. And speak freely.
I true, true. I do know that there was like a lot of push when I was a bit younger to know how to actually manage my time. And nowadays I do use like those to-do lists and those schedulings and those calendar stuff. But I
Mm.
think one thing that also popped up, because I think in my earlier or recently basically, I have been reading like books, trying to like see how does this work, like managing time or finances, and trying to learn as much as I can. And I think one line from Rory Varden's book on procrastinate on purpose. The title is off-putting, but yes, um, from that book, it basically says that it's not necessarily time management, because we can't like capture time or hold time, or
To
time is not
control
necessarily
it. Hmm.
tangible. He mentioned that it's more of like self-management, whereby you yourself need to have the discipline or the permission, or give yourself permission to do certain things. So um, whereby now it's self-management, it's not necessarily blocking out the time on your calendar thinking that you manage time, but it's actually
Hmm.
then saying, I need to sleep at this amount of time, so I cannot watch
That's
TV,
quite
or
good,
I
actually.
cannot do this. So it's really more about managing yourself instead of managing the actual time pieces or blocking out the
Hmm.
schedules. And then another thing in that area is that I think we just needed to align on priority. I saw somewhere else, because in the book it said the word priority um, was first created as like a single, like one, but then recently, or like years later, became priorities, whereby now we have multiple things that we need to juggle. Um, in time management, I think it's just aligning to what is the one thing or the one goal, or the one direction, if I could say,
Hmm.
that you live by. In the Christian's perspective would be like, how do I follow Christ and make him known to the world? And what are the tools that I have, or the skill sets, or the I think the occupation that I have, to let that shine. And then if you know that, okay, I'm good in the medicine industry, then you're like, okay, how do I do doctoral or nursing or my research in a way that allows people to know that there is a God, and and follow them. So then you start to realize, okay, the time that I spend doing this, I could actually be putting into more research. And I think it's also with managing time, it's also just finding something that you enjoy. um, I don't think that you would, either it's something that you enjoy or it's something that you are passionate or you find value. So if you find that you want something or you want to do something, you're going to almost automatically put time to it, or you find yourself doing it, or you find yourself like practicing it. Because I remember when I was younger, I wanted to like I was really good into to skateboarding, and I I found time to actually start practicing skateboarding and learn like certain tricks or um, watch videos on it. So, for example, like on a Friday afternoon, I'd be going outside, maybe doing like a 30-minute session. Saturday morning, I'd go again. Sunday afternoon, I'd go again. And then in between the weeks, I'd be watching maybe like 10 minutes videos to like just learn and practice. But then all of that time towards skateboarding was because I liked skateboarding at the time. I still like it now. Um, but at that time I liked it and I really wanted to go into it. So it's always finding something that you enjoy or that you're passionate about, and then you'll find yourself automatically just aligning time towards it. So it has to be something that you're passionate about or something that you enjoy for you to put time to it. So for me, how I manage my time, I'm keen into like right now, I'm keen into just learning about things. Because I'm 24, turning 25, so I'm near that mid-quarter life crisis moment. Uh,
So young to be
yeah,
facing
so
crisis.
uh, so I think right now I'm just trying to learn, like, okay, how do I do this, or how do I save up for this, or what does this mean? I'm using abstract terms, but like, for example, buying a house, or investing, or buying a car, or finding that significant other, or something like that.
Wow.
But just really, uh, just really putting time into it. And so now that I'm interested or invested in that kind of topic, for me, automatically, I start reading more books, or I start watching more YouTube videos, or I'd start reading more on the Bible, not necessarily because, um, how can I say, I'm not necessarily reading the Bible for reading the Bible's sake, but I'm reading the Bible because I'm now looking for answers, or I'm now looking, or I now want that relationship with God, or I now feel like I need to do more. So it's also like, I think time management also comes with a sense of growth in oneself. Like there's always like a change in oneself to say, before I was doing this, but I don't feel like doing this anymore. I'm now focused on this. And because now I'm focused on this, or this is now my trajectory, I want to allocate more time to it. So time management is always also something like that. It's subjective in a way, whereby I can't now tell or prescribe that you need to use this calendar app and automatically all your time management problems will go away. It is more of a tool. So I could give you the hammer, I could give you the nail, but if you don't want to build the house, then the house is not
It's
going
on
to be
you.
built.
It's on you.
Exactly. So it's also something that needs to be like internal, whereby someone wants to do something, or someone is now interested or persuaded into doing it. And a lot of the time with time management, it's not necessarily to teach them the skills, though the skills are good. It's more to teach them the reason behind time management, or the motivation behind time management. Like, where do you want to go? And let's say you wanted to go into you, or you want to be like a CEO. Okay, are you spending time with CEOs?
Building
So no, and then now you start actually going, okay, now in your calendar, can you set up time to go spend time with CEOs or speak to CEOs? And then you'd find they actually start putting time to it. So I know it's a kind of a long answer, but
No,
how
no.
I manage my time is basically subjective. Though I do use the tools like calendars and blocking out and to-do lists, I think it's more of like a subjective approach to time management, whereby there's a desire for a certain
Certain things.
outcome. And that desire pushes you to do things at an allocated time, actually aligning your priorities to what you desire.
Mhm.
Mm.
And social media.
And social media, yes. So for social media, it's a trap. Social media is a trap. I think one thing that social media does
It's a trap.
is it's twofold for me, because
Okay.
on the one side, when we look at social media, it's scrolling or just replying and memes and that, or finding an outlet to share something or read up or knowledge and that. But another thing with social media is like it's community based, so you spend time speaking to people that are not necessarily nearby. And
Mhm.
at the time now, or during the 2020 and 2021, the lockdown, has actually been quite beneficial to have social media just to keep up to date or keep in contact with people that you can't necessarily go to a coffee
So
shop
yeah,
with or to the park or something like that. So it has been good, but then there's also that trap of the time spent on social media. So to reduce the time spent on social media, I think I just did like more of like a technical approach, whereby on my phone I just set a timer for it. So I can only go on Facebook for like 5 minutes, or I can only go on Instagram for like 10 minutes.
this much
And if
time.
that time, yeah, if that time expires, then it's done for the day. But then it's also a bit of like self-management, whereby when the time expires, don't now
You
go into
rest.
the settings and increase the time. So it's a bit tricky with that, but I mean, there's also a good benefit to social media, whereby you keep up to date with, oh, okay, that
Community
person's now in
aspect.
this place, or that person, the community aspect. So it's not to um, completely remove social media, but it's just to be aware that it can take a lot of time. Because I know there's other people who work on social media. So for example,
Mhm.
the YouTube channel, you'd need to go onto YouTube to post your video, see how much that's,
Mm.
but then it's just um, knowing that this can grab a lot of time, or these
Uh,
videos can actually, so it has to be something probably intentional, whereby um, when you go, like if I go onto like YouTube, I would tell myself, okay, I'm going to see this video, and then I'd watch that video. So you need to probably be intentional and just grab yourself before you get sucked into a rabbit hole, and then you find yourself watching
and
videos
it
on how to fix
sucks.
horseshoes.
It sucks you in
Yeah,
hard. Yeah,
so it's
perhaps
tricky.
as yeah, yeah. Perhaps as one of the call it the we're rounding it up now in a way. In terms of
Mm,
skills, are there any particular skills that you um still looking to learn in terms of setting yourself? I know you say you're reading and you're trying to even read up some more, but is
mm,
there more than that? The question behind the question there is, how are you, I suppose you've touched on it to some extent, how are you best setting yourself up so that when you're looking back, say in 2 years' time, at the David of a 26, 27-year-old, looking at the David of a
mm,
24, 25-year-old, you'll see that there would have been a change and a positive change at that as well.
mm. True, true. I think there are some things I've touched on. Um, I think one is just also just to be open, to be not necessarily taking everything that comes, but basically studying to show yourself approved.
Right.
So if someone says something, don't disregard it completely, but basically say, why is he or she saying that, or where's this coming from? And then once you know where people come from, then you're able to either persuade them to come to your side, or for you to learn more about their approach. Or it could also be something whereby you keep in your bag of arsenal, whereby if you see someone else saying the same type of language, you can say, okay, I know that it comes from
Yeah,
here,
it's more,
but
yeah.
do you know about this? So being open to different perspectives, I think that's something that currently it's kind of sad, whereby people, they don't have, or they abuse the freedom of, if I could say this, freedom of speech, whereby I can't say this because it offends so and so, even though it's my belief that you can't do this. For example, I think one of my beliefs is that homosexuality is a sin, but now I can't just say homosexuality is a sin, otherwise I'd have the entire LGBTQ community on my
Come on.
doorstep. Yeah, so it's that fear whereby we can't actually speak out. And then on the other side of the extreme is that we speak out and we just say complete garbage, whereby there's people who basically verbally or abuse people on social media. So it's finding that balance between this is what I believe, but I'm not saying this to hurt your feelings. I'm just saying this because this is what I believe. Finding that balance. So being open to different perspectives is something that we definitely need to learn growing up. That what I say or what I think is different from what someone else's thinks. So I think one classic example is that image of the 6 and the 9. So the one person standing on the other side says it's the 6, but then the other person standing on the other side says it's the 9, and they get into an argument. But if they go over to the other person's side and say, okay, because you're standing here, I can see it looks like a 6. If you come over to my side, it looks like a 9. And then how do we then reconcile, or how do we then approach this? And then when we come together, someone can say, okay, who actually painted this? Let's ask the author. And the
Mhm.
author will say, when I painted it, I was actually painting it
Looking
for
for
fun. Don't take this too seriously. Or when this was painted, there were other numbers next to it, but those other numbers have gone. I don't know if it's a 6 or a 9 anymore. So those type of things, whereby if we open to other people's perspectives, it will basically solve a lot of our problems, whereby we remove that prejudice or that bias or that self-entitlement, if I could say, because what you know could be actually the solution to my questions, and what I know could be the solution to your questions. But we won't know that unless we speak, or
sit
we
down
talk,
and
or we
openly speak. Yeah.
sit down and openly talk. I think we're so quick to shoot first that we forget that someone else actually has something valuable to say. I think one thing that Trevor Noah said was that in America, whereby the police were pulling over people and then from the traffic lights, and then just like shooting them, or being hostile because someone pulled out his wallet but got shot. And then if you think you're in South Africa, you get shot because you didn't pull out your wallet. So it's like different different perspectives. Like, oh, okay, um, people do things differently, and I think growing up, we just need to understand that, and that will help solve a lot of our issues. And then another thing growing up is that we should be keen to taking notes. So note taking, I think, is something that started probably 2 years ago, but I'm very grateful for it because now I can go back and say at such a date I wrote down this, did I complete it? So note taking and reflection, not just doing things haphazardly or going through the motions, but actually putting down tangible steps, or tangible or palatable approaches, whereby on Monday you write down, I want to do this week. And then on Sunday you say, did I do it? Why not? And then how can I resolve it? So note taking and reflection. And then obviously saving. So finding more ways to save money, or to improve or make that extra additional sources of income. And then I think the last thing that will definitely help me, or us as a collective, when we grow 5 years into the future, is just, besides listening to other people, keeping in contact with like your roots. So the older people, the older generation, listening to their advice, and basically sifting through it and seeing, okay, how does this apply to what I am now? Um, so moving away from the independent quote unquote mentality, whereby I think independence in itself has been twisted, whereby if I believe it, if I think of it, it's more of that we made it undependent, whereby I don't need anybody. But what I think independence actually means is that I don't um, depend on something for certain things. For example, right? Um, when we were like small, right, or babies, we couldn't walk, so we needed our parents to carry us. But then once we stayed with our parents, we now can walk, and then after walking, we still need their help for other things, but we don't need their help for walking. But I think what society today has done it is that now that we walk, we tell them, no, we also don't need your help to drive, and we don't need your help to fly either. But we still need other people's help.
Mhm.
So staying close to your roots is actually still depending on other people for things, knowing that you can't do everything basically. Just because you're good at math doesn't mean that you're good at English. So keeping to your roots, staying close to the people who groomed you, who made you grow and who taught you, staying close to them, seeing if there's more you can learn from them and applying what you actually learn. So as soon as you get 2 steps up, don't think that you're on a skyscraper. You still need a lot to learn. Just being open to learning more, that will definitely help. And then I think the other thing is also like to recognize that you're 2 steps up. There's always extremes with things, like there's left and there's right, but when you do make those progresses, acknowledge that you made progress. Because I think a lot of things as well is that we're so focused on this hyper perfection that as soon as you make a little progress compared to someone else, you think it's nothing, but it's actually a big thing. Whereby if before it used to take you 2 hours to get to town, but now it gets you 1 hour to get to town, acknowledge that that there's been progress, because that acknowledgement of the progress will then help you or motivate you to do more. But if you progress and you think that it doesn't work or it doesn't amount to anything, it's going to lower your perception of yourself or lower the ability to do more because you think that your previous work has not really done anything. But all in all, I think just being dependent on others and also acknowledging your progress, and then being open to other people's perspective, and then the other generic stuff as well, as like saving and being polite and hearing people out. But definitely there's a lot still to learn. I mean, it's a non-exhaustive list. I know if I keep speaking, I can make a whole seminar.
That's perfectly fine. Thank you very much, man, for your time. I appreciate it.